An MSNBC guest is under fire for saying that the voters don't actually choose the Democratic nominee and don't really have much of a place. I'm going to show you this video featuring Anton Gun, and then I'll break it down.
But this idea that perhaps Bernie Sanders is moving the goalposts a bit when it comes to delegates and what could go down at the convention in Milwaukee. What say you to that?
Well, I will say that Bernie is moving the goalposts. This is what people need to remember. The Democratic Party has a party. The party decides its nominee. The public doesn't really decide the nominee. The public gets to vote for President of the United States, but people who are active in the party, who participate in the party, they decide the nominee. Superdelegates are very influential in the party. Also, delegates are very influential. And just because you're a pledged delegate for Bernie Sanders or a pledged delegate for Joe Biden doesn't mean when you get to the convention floor that you'll stay a delegate for Biden or Sanders. That's a process. And so it is a process to pick the candidate who wants to be the standard bearer for the party to try to win in November. And so Bernie got to understand that process. And it's a real selective and detailed process. In 2008, the Obama campaign from the very beginning focused on the delegate process because we knew it all was going to come down to the delegates, who's committed to you, who wants to be on your team at the end, and do you really feel like they can be elected?
So basically, party elites. Oh, great. You know that whole small d democracy thing that we pretended that we cared about? Yeah, we were just kidding. We were kidding about that. No, if we don't like who the majorities pick, the majority of people, well then, or at least the plurality of people, we're going to choose someone else who more represents our interests. Because, we don't really care about what the people actually think. Oh, those plebeians. How dare they pick somebody like Bernie Sanders? Oh, man. That's essentially the argument, by the way, for superdelegates, that voters are too stupid to be able to pick their own nominee, so that the elites have to come in and do that. Now, he didn't say that directly, of course. He's just saying, well, it's a process. It's a process. But why does that process exist to be in the first place? It's because they don't trust the electorate to choose a nominee. They don't want the electorate. They don't want the voters to choose people. They want to choose themselves. But of course, they do hide it with the veneer of democracy. But at the same time, they set up these rules like the superdelegates in order to, if they don't like that choice, to be able to take it from them. So look, understand, they never intended for the public to have as much power as they do now, by the way. And they do now, thanks to Bernie Sanders and the Sanders delegates from the Unity Reform Commission. Our friend Namiki Konst was on that, and she fought to get rid of superdelegates. But unfortunately, as the vote went, there weren't enough votes to eliminate superdelegates outright, but were able to blunt their power and really put them towards the second round if there is a brokered convention, the second round of votes. So there's still a situation where you could have a brokered convention and these superdelegates can come in and steal the nomination. Whereas back in 2016, they were already able to do that in the first round. So understand that's how this is, right? So now Mr. Gunn's comments prompted a little bit of backlash. Here you have Sanders speechwriter David Sirota tweeting this. So apparently the new line is the public doesn't really decide the nominee. Well, that's great. I mean, you just tell all those volunteers out there and all the people that are donating and knocking on doors and really, investing their time in not just people like Bernie Sanders, but there are people that support Elizabeth Warren. There are people that support Pete Buttigieg. I don't know who, but I mean, there's got to be somebody other than the people in the wine caves that support Buttigieg. All of their efforts also mean absolutely nothing if we have a system like this where they can go and choose whoever they want. And some names floated, of course, were Michelle Obama, Sherrod Brown, Chris Coons, Mark Warner, people that aren't even running and hadn't even won a state. That is an insanely stupid system. But it is a system where he's saying, well, that's what we have. And there's a process. No, we shouldn't have that process. We need to get rid of that process. Now, Sean King on Twitter also said, These comments were utter foolishness. Quote, I can hardly believe he formed his lips to say this out loud. And why wouldn't he, though? They're brazen about this. They're honest about this. This is the system that they want. This is the system that they love. And they don't care about reality, right? They don't care about voters, about wanting about the will of the voters. And the will of the voters so far seems to be Bernie Sanders, who has won the first, was won New Hampshire. Buttigieg is saying that he won Iowa, but it's super, super close, whatever. Nevada, Bernie Sanders pulled out a win, and it's very likely that Bernie Sanders can do fairly well in South Carolina, blowing out everybody in California. He's set to do very, very well on Super Tuesday. And so it seems like the voters seem to be backing Bernie Sanders. And so it's very likely that he will get the most delegates. But if he doesn't hit 1991, then, well, you're going to have the super delegates come in and do whatever they want. Democracy. What democracy, right? Where the people pick? Oh, no. And we're going to allow some voting, but no. We're going to limit it to candidates that we think are safe and pre-approved. We don't want those plebs voting in somebody who would challenge our power. Oh, please, I do declare we must make all the decisions. It's crazy. You know who doesn't have super delegates? The Republican Party. It's funny when the Republican Party is actually more Democratic than the Democratic Party. And of course, here's what they did with this entire situation. Donald Trump Jr. came out and criticized not only him, but also Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Were able to criticize the Democratic Party for doing this. Never give those guys ammunition. I mean, seriously. You're giving them ammunition. And then, of course, this helps only Donald Trump, especially if they do take the nomination. You say, oh, look, see, that's the exact swamp that I've been trying to drain the whole time. And see, the Republican Party is actually representative of our voters. But look at the Democrats over there. What a disaster. You're helping Donald Trump. And so they don't have super delegates. And now I've actually heard this argument from Democrats. But like, if they had super delegates, they could have stopped Donald Trump. Well, there's no guarantee of that. I mean, under Trump, they've done pretty well. I mean, the Republican Party has done pretty well. In fact, when he was elected, not only did the Republicans have the House and the White House, they also had the Senate, and they got 2 Supreme Court picks. And they've got numerous, thanks to Democrats, by the way, a lot of judicial picks. And so now the judiciary is now fully stacked in favor of Republicans, in favor of conservatives for decades. Well, wonderful. Okay, congratulations, right? They won. They went with populism. And so maybe, I don't know, that's kind of a winning strategy. Maybe we should do something similar, but with actual progressive populism and not fake populism like from the right wing. With somebody who actually does want to help the American people. I know it's so crazy. Get out of here, you crazy person, you. But no, let's actually do something that's smart and not stupid. Let's not listen to people like Mr. Gun, who are the anti-Bernie elite. By the way, back in 2015, this guy has been an opponent of Bernie Sanders for quite some time. He said that Bernie Sanders sounds angry all the time. Well, if you're, I don't know about you, but if you were a regular person and you're not angry, well, you must not be paying attention of what's going on. The only people right now that are not angry are people who are comfortable. And we all know who those people are. All right. Not only that, but more importantly, Mr. Gunn is part of a board member of the group, the Democratic Majority for Israel. Now, that group is an AIPAC-affiliated organization, and they have aired multiple attack ads against Bernie Sanders in Iowa and Nevada. So this is is a pro right-wing government of Israel group, right? And so understand, they support Netanyahu. They support the right-wing government of Israel, and they're attacking a leftist Jewish candidate. So just understand that, right? Just kind of absorb that. Now, how did we find out about this anyway? Well, it's not as if he told people on MSNBC. He did not. No, he did not disclose that relationship on MSNBC. And so that's kind of interesting, right? That we had to find out by actually looking into him. Now, another thing is that Gunn has said, this is back in 2019, he told that Michael Tracy that Bernie Sanders should have never been allowed in the Democratic Party. Quote, he's never been a Democrat till it became politically expedient for him to say, I'm a Democrat. He chose to be an interloper. I wonder, has Mr. Gunn actually, and this is Anton, I almost said James. James Gunn is fine. It's Mr. Anton Gun, right? I've never heard him criticize Michael Bloomberg for not being a Democrat. Because Michael Bloomberg is literally a Republican. And by the way, Michael Bloomberg is one of the guys who wants a brokered convention desperately. Not because Michael Bloomberg wants to win. It's because Michael Bloomberg wants to stop Bernie Sanders. And the reason, of course, is that he doesn't want his taxes to go up. I mean, that's simple, right? Yeah, I don't want my taxes to go up, so I'm going to blow up democracy and stop the person with the most votes from getting the nomination. And I'm going to, along with Mr. Gunn and the rest of these superdelegates, make sure that this doesn't happen. Make sure that Bernie Sanders never wins the nomination and that we get someone who is pre-approved to not raise my taxes, or somebody, of course, who is a milquetoast centrist that is going to absolutely lose to Donald Trump. That's the plan. But does Mr. Gunn criticize Michael Bloomberg? Of course not. Because they have the absolute same goal to stop Bernie Sanders. Now, I don't know if Gunn wants to stop Bernie Sanders to protect Bloomberg's taxes. No, I don't know that. Maybe he actually is concerned, oh, what if this guy loses to Donald Trump? Well, you should probably know better because there are access to polls. Nonetheless, maybe he just doesn't read polls. Maybe he knows absolutely nothing. I don't know. But you would think that he'd know that Bernie Sanders is different than Michael Bloomberg, who was a Republican, as I said before, and then was an independent, and then joined the Democratic Party to run as president. Unlike him, Bernie Sanders has caucused with the Democrats forever, served as a member of the Senate Democratic leadership. And in fact, that's currently his position. He's in leadership for the Democratic Party. And he's also running for president as a Democrat. So that's again, this whole thing's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Now, the person that gets the most votes should obviously win, meaning if the superdelegates actually cared about democracy, that they would back Bernie Sanders in the states that he won, even if he doesn't get a majority of the superdelegates or majority of the delegates going into Milwaukee. That would actually better represent the will of the people, or, as Bernie Sanders had tried to do previously, just eliminate the superdelegates completely. Oh, but then, of course, people like Gunn and people like William Owen, who I talked about in a different segment, these lobbyists, these corporate lobbyists, well, they'll lose whatever power they have. And they of course, cannot have that. Unfortunately, what you have here in the Democratic Party is too many people with financial and political interests that only care about themselves and not representing the average American voter. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.